Upon the Mathematics of the Breath and the Way by Charles Bukowski. I was going to begin this with a little rundown on the female, but since the smoke on the local battlefront has cleared a bit, I will relent. But there are 50,000 men in this nation who must sleep on their bellies for fear of loosing their parts to women with wild glazed eyes and knives. Brothers and sisters, I am 52, and there is a trail of females behind me. Enough for 5 men's lives. Some of the ladies have claimed that I have betrayed them for drink. Well, I'd like to see any man stick his pecker into a 5th of whiskey. Of course, you can get your tongue in there, but the bottle doesn't respond. Well, among the trumpets, let's get back to the word. The word. I'm on the way to the track opening day at Hollywood Park, but I'll tell you about the word. To get the word down proper, that takes courage, seeing the form, living the life and getting it into the line. Hemingway takes his critical blows now from people who can't write. There are hundreds of thousands of people who think they can write. They are the critics, the bellyachers and the mockers. To point to a good writer and call him a hunk of shit helps satisfy their loss as creators, and the better a man gets, the more he is envied and, in turn, hated. You ought to hear them razz and demean Pinkay and Shoemaker, 2 of the greatest jocks ever to steer a horse. There's a little man outside our local tracks who sells newspapers, and he says, "Get your paper, get your info on Shoemaker the Faker." Here he is calling a man who has ridden more winners than any other jock alive, and he's still riding and riding well. And here's this newspaper guy selling papers for a dime and calling the Shoe a fraud. The Shoe is a millionaire, not that that's important, but he did get it with his talent. And he could buy this guy's newspapers. All of them. Rest of this guy's life and into a half-dozen eternities. Hemingway, too, gets the sneers from the newspaper boys and girls of writing. They didn't like his exit. I thought his exit was quite fine. He created his own mercy killing, and he created some writing. Some of it depended too much on style, but it was a style he broke through with, a style that ruined thousands of writers who attempted to use any portion of it. Once a style is evolved, it is thought of as a simple thing. But style not only evolves through a method, it evolves through feeling. It is like laying a brush to canvas in a certain way. And if you're not living along the path of power and flow, style vanishes. Hemingway's style did tend to vanish toward the end, progressively, but that's because he let down his guard and let people do things to him. But he gave us more than plenty. There is a minor poet I know who came over the other night. He is a learned man and clever. He lets the ladies support him so you know he's good at something. He is a very powerful figure of a man growing soft around the edges. Looks quite literary, and carries these black notebooks around with him, and he reads to you from them. This boy told me the other night, "Bukowski, I can write like you, but you can't write like me." I didn't answer him because he needs his self-glory, but really he only thinks he can write like me. Genius could be the ability to say a profound thing in a simple way, or even to say a simple thing in a simpler way. Oh, by the way, if you want to get one angle on a minor writer, it is one who throws a party or gets one thrown for him when his book comes out. Hemingway studied the bullfights for form and meaning and courage and failure and the way. I go to boxing matches and attend horse races for the same reason. There is a feeling at the wrists and the shoulders and the temples. There is a manner of watching and recording that grows into the line and the form and the act and the fact and the flower, and the dog walking and the dirty panties under the bed, and the sound of the typewriter as you're sitting there. That's the big sound, the biggest sound in the world when you're getting it down in your way, the right way, and no beautiful woman counts before it, and nothing that you could paint or sculpt counts before it. It is the final art, this writing down of the word, and the reason for valor is all there. It is the finest gamble ever arranged, and not many win. Somebody asked me, "Bukowski, if you taught a course in writing, what would you ask them to do?" I answered, I'd send them all to the racetrack and force them to bet $5 on each race. This ass thought I was joking. The human race is very good at treachery and cheating and modifying a position. What people who want to be writers need is to be put in an area that they cannot maneuver out of by weak and dirty play. This is why groups of people at parties are so disgusting. All their envy and smallness and trickery surfaces. If you want to find out who your friends are, you can do two things: invite them to a party or go to jail. You will soon find that you don't have any friends. If you think I am wandering here, hold your tits or your balls or hold somebody else's. Everything fits here. And since I must presume I haven't seen any of it, that I am being honoured and criticised in this issue, I should say something about the little magazines, although I might have said some of it elsewhere, at least over a row of beer bottles. Little magazines are useless perpetuators of useless talent. Back in the 20s and 30s, there was not an abundance of littles. A little magazine was an event, not a calamity. One could trace the names from the littles and up through literary history. I mean, they began there and they went up, they became books, novels, things. Now most little magazine people begin little and remain little. There are always exceptions. For instance, I remember first reading Truman Capote in a little named Decade, and I thought, here is a man with some briskness, style, and fairly original energy. But basically, like it or not, the large, slick magazines print a much higher level of work than the littles, and most especially in prose. Every jackass in America pumps out countless and ineffectual poems, and a large number of them are published in the littles. Tra-la-la, another edition. Give us a grant, see what we're doing. I receive countless little magazines through the mail, unsolicited, unasked for. I flip through them. Arid, vast nothingness. I think that the miracle of our times is that so many people can write down so many words that mean absolutely nothing. Try it sometime. It's almost impossible to write down words that mean absolutely nothing, but they can do it, and they do it continually and relentlessly. I put out 3 issues of a little Laugh Literary and Man the Humping Guns. The material received was so totally inept that the other editor and myself were forced to write most of the poems. He'd write the first half of one poem, then I'd finish it. Then I'd go the first half of another and he'd finish it. Then we'd sit around and get to the names. Let's see, what are we going to call this cocksucker? And with the discovery of the Mimeo machine, everybody became an editor. All with great flair, very little expense and no results at all. Ole was an early exception, and I might grant you 1 or 2 other exceptions if you corner me with the facts. As per the better printed, non-Mimeo mags, one must grant the Wormwood Review, 1/200 issues now, as the outstanding work of our time in that area. Quietly and without weeping or ranting or bitching or quitting or pausing, or without writing braggadocio letters, as most do, about being arrested for driving drunk on a bicycle in Pacific Palisades, or cornholing one of the National Endowment for the Arts editors in a Portland hotel room. Malone has simply gone on and compiled an exact and lively talent, issue after issue after issue. Malone lets his issues speak for themselves and remains invisible. You won't find him beating on your door one night with a huge jug of cheap port wine saying, "Hey, I'm Marvin Malone. I printed your poem Cat Shit in a Bird's Nest in my last issue. I think I'm going to kick me some ass. You got anything for me to fuck around here?" A vast, grinding, lonely hearts club of no talents. That's what the littles have evolved to, with the editors a worse breed than the writers. If you are a writer seriously interested in creating an art instead of a foolishness, then there are at any moment a few littles to submit to, where the editing is professional instead of personal. I haven't read the mag that this piece is submitted to, but I would suggest, along with Wormwood, as decent arenas: the New York Quarterly, Event, Second Eon, Joe DiMaggio, Second Coming, the Little Magazine and Hearse. "You're supposed to be a writer," she says. "If you put all the energy into writing that you put into the racetrack, you'd be great." I think of something Wallace Stevens once said: "Success as the result of industry is a peasant's ideal." Or if he didn't say that, he said something close to that. The writing arrives when it wants to. There is nothing you can do about it. You can't squeeze more writing out of the living than is there. Any attempt to do so creates a panic in the soul, diffuses and jars the line. There are stories that Hemingway would get up early in the morning and have all his work done at noon. But though I never met him personally, I feel as if Hemingway were an alcoholic who wanted to get his work out of the way so he could get drunk. What I have seen evolve in the littles with most new and fresh talent is an interesting first splash. I think, here's finally one. Maybe we have something now. But the same mechanism begins over and over again. The fresh new talent, having splashed, begins to appear everywhere. He sleeps and bathes with the goddamn typewriter, and it's running all the time. His name is in every mimeo from Maine to Mexico, and the work grows weaker and weaker and weaker and continues to appear. Somebody gets a book out for him, or her, and then they are reading at your local university. They read the 6 or 7 good early poems and all the bad ones. Then you have another little magazine, Name. But what has happened is that instead of trying to create the poem, they try for as many little mag appearances in as many little magazines as possible. It becomes a contest of publication rather than creation. This diffusion of talent usually occurs among writers in their 20s who don't have enough experience, who don't have enough meat to pick off the bone. You can't write without living, and writing all the time is not living. Nor does drinking create a writer or brawling create a writer. And although I've done plenty of both, it's merely a fallacy and a sick romanticism to assume that these actions will make a better writer of one. Of course, there are times when you have to fight, and times when you have to drink. But these times are really anti-creative, and there's nothing you can do about them. Writing finally even becomes work, especially if you are trying to pay the rent and child support with it. But it is the finest work and the only work, and it's a work that boosts your ability to live, and your ability to live pays you back with your ability to create. One feeds the other, it is all very magic. I quit a very dull job at the age of 50. 'Twas said I had security for life. And I sat down in front of the typewriter. There's no better way. There are moments of total flaming hell when you feel as if you're going mad. There are moments, days, weeks of no word, no sound, as if it had all vanished. Then it arrives and you sit smoking, pounding, it roars and roars. You can get up at noon, you can work until 3 a.m. Some people will bother you. They will not understand what you are trying to do. They will knock on your door and sit in a chair and eat up your hours while giving you nothing. When too many nothing people arrive and keep arriving, you must be cruel to them, for they are being cruel to you. You must run their asses out on the street. There are some people who pay their way. They bring their own energy and their own light, but most of the others are useless both to you and to themselves. It is not being humane to tolerate the dead. It only increases their deadness, and they always leave plenty of it with you after they are gone. And then, of course, there are the ladies. The ladies would rather go to bed with a poet than anything, even a German police dog, though I knew one lady who took very much delight in claiming she had fucked one President Kennedy. I had no way of knowing. So if you're a good poet, I'd suggest that you learn to be a good lover too. This is a creative act in itself, being a good lover, so learn how. Learn how to do it very well, because if you're a good poet, you're going to get many opportunities. And though it's not like being a rock star, it will come along. So don't waste it, like rock stars waste it by going at it rote and half-assed. Let the ladies know that you are really there. Then, of course, they will keep buying your books. And let this be enough advice for a little while. Oh yes, I won $180 opening day. Dropped $80 yesterday, so today is the day that counts. It's 10 minutes to 11. First post 2 p.m. I must start lining up my horse jeans. There was a guy out there yesterday with a heart machine attached to himself, and he was sitting in a wheelchair. He was making bets. Put him in a rest home and he'll be dead overnight. Saw another guy out there, blind. He must have had a better day than I did yesterday. I've got to phone Quagliano and tell him I've finished this article. Now there's a very strange son of a bitch. I don't know how he makes it, and he won't tell me. I see him at the boxing matches sitting there with a beer and looking very relaxed. I wonder what he's got going. He's got me worried. Small Press Review, May 1973.